I think it's safe to say that change is on my agenda. Change for good. And I embrace that and I enjoy that change. I don't fear it.
3 minutes ago, the silence surrounding one of the palace's most guarded disputes was shattered. Prince William had discovered a private attempt to secure permanent royal access for Camilla's son, and instead of allowing the request to disappear into palace paperwork, he exposed it before the king and senior household officials. One document, one name, and one carefully hidden request had placed a family relationship, a royal residence, and the future authority of the crown on a collision course. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William read the memorandum twice. The prince paused over Tom Parker Bowles's name, then studied the handwritten note carrying Camilla's approval. A restricted access memorandum is a document controlling entry to protected royal rooms and residences. This one did not request a family visit. It sought continuing entry for her son, including privileges reserved for working royals, senior household members, and specially cleared guests. The discovery felt like more than a procedural breach. William believed those private spaces protected the future sovereign, Catherine, and their children from influence without duty. He demanded to know why review had been bypassed, but the silence only deepened his suspicion. Someone expected the file to move quietly. Someone assumed he would never see it. Camilla reacted with force. The queen consort gripped her chair and insisted Tom should not be treated like an outsider whenever he visited his mother. She saw the request as dignity, security, and protection for her family. Yet beneath her defense lived a darker fear. When Charles's reign ended, would every door open to her children suddenly close? William found the danger buried in one phrase: continuing domestic and ceremonial entry. The wording meant access to private family areas and formal spaces, without an end date. The final approval box assigned to the keeper of the privy purse, the senior official overseeing royal finances and household authorizations, remained blank. Camilla's note directed staff to proceed before review. The prince carried the file into Charles's private office and placed it before him. He pointed to the empty authorization line, held the king's gaze, and said, "This was already moving forward before anyone intended to tell me." Charles did not defend his wife. He looked toward the closed door and quietly asked who else had seen the file. The question changed everything. The monarch feared more than embarrassment. He believed the request had traveled farther than either man understood. But before William could uncover how far it had gone, he faced the loyalties behind 3 names: a wife, a son, and a king trapped between them. This was never simply a dispute over a door, a pass, or a room inside a palace. For Camilla, the request represented protection for the son who had lived beside royalty without ever belonging fully to it. For Charles, it threatened to reopen old wounds he had spent decades trying to contain. And for William, it raised a chilling possibility that personal affection was quietly being converted into permanent influence inside the monarchy he would one day inherit. Camilla had feared this moment for years. The queen consort knew Tom Parker Bowles stood close to royal life without ever holding a formal place inside it. Palace access meant more than convenience. It meant reassurance that her son would not be pushed away when Charles's reign ended, and the future king took control of the royal household, the staff, residences, and official structure supporting the monarch. William saw the same request differently. The prince believed royal residences were protected spaces tied to security, succession, and duty. They were also private homes for Catherine, George, Charlotte, and Louis. To him, permanent entry without an official role could create influence without responsibility. And once that privilege became established, removing it could look like a personal attack. Charles read the document alone. The king removed his glasses, folded them slowly, and admitted that refusing Camilla would feel like rejecting her family. Yet his heir's warning remained impossible to ignore. The monarch understood that a promise made from affection could become a rule imposed on the next reign. Tom reacted with embarrassment when he learned his name stood at the center of the dispute. He told his mother he had never asked to be treated like a prince. Still, withdrawing publicly would make Camilla appear defeated and could expose the private pressure she had placed on Charles. Camilla reminded her husband of an old assurance. During a recorded private conversation kept in a household account, the king had once promised that her children would never be made to feel unwelcome. She had treated those words as lasting protection. William later discovered that she believed the promise carried institutional force, not merely personal kindness. William's anger was never truly aimed at Tom. Standing beside a window with Catherine, he explained that permanent access could survive long after its original purpose disappeared. The Princess of Wales listened carefully, then warned that avoiding a painful decision now would make the future crisis far worse. Catherine suddenly remembered something else. Months earlier, Tom had entered a restricted reception area during a royal ceremony, even though his name did not appear on the approved guest list. That single memory changed the meaning of the document. The request had not begun on paper. It had begun with a door opening when it should have remained closed. Months before William exposed the access request, a single moment inside Windsor Castle changed the atmosphere around Camilla's family. During a private reception following a royal charity ceremony, Tom Parker Bowles appeared beyond a security checkpoint reserved for officially cleared guests. No public argument followed, no announcement was made. Yet William noticed the confusion on an equerry's face. Catherine saw an aide quietly hide the guest list, and Camilla reacted as though the entrance had already been approved. The Windsor Heritage reception became the trigger no one could later dismiss. The East Gallery was a private section of the castle, used for controlled royal gatherings, not an open space for ordinary guests. Tom had been removed from the final restricted list, yet he crossed the checkpoint as if the decision had never been made. A palace security officer checked the printed names and found no authorization. He turned to an equerry, a royal aide responsible for assisting senior members of the family, and quietly asked for instructions. Before either man could act, Camilla stepped forward and said her son was present at her personal invitation. The queen consort spoke calmly, but the meaning was unmistakable. Her word was expected to overrule the document. William watched the exchange with growing anger. The prince saw staff being forced to choose between written protocol and a verbal command from the king's wife. The Camilla saw his expression and understood it as judgment. Later, she told Charles that his heir had made Tom feel like an intruder in front of the household. That humiliation hardened her resolve. The queen consort told the king she would never allow her son to be stopped like that again. Charles listened, but he did not give a clear answer. His silence felt cautious to him. To her, it sounded like permission. William asked for the reception log the next morning. The document, which recorded every approved entrance, contained Tom's name in different handwriting. The added time did not match the original printed sequence. Someone had altered the record after the reception ended. The prince confronted Charles alone in a corridor. The king tried to contain the damage with 5 quiet words. It was one evening. William did not soften. One evening becomes a rule when no one is willing to say no. Charles then admitted that Camilla had asked him that same night to formalize palace access for her children. He delayed the request, hoping emotion would fade. Instead, a preliminary proposal was drafted before breakfast the next morning. William demanded the original copy. When he reached the private sitting room, Camilla was already waiting. The hidden history had surfaced, and this time, no closed door could protect them. When William entered the king's private sitting room, Camilla was already standing beside the fireplace with the access proposal in her hand. Charles remained seated between them, visibly exhausted before a word had been spoken. The prince did not bow to soften the moment. The queen consort did not offer an explanation. 2 competing visions of the royal family were suddenly facing each other, and the king knew that whichever side he chose would carry a lasting personal cost. William crossed the room and placed the Windsor reception record beside the new access memorandum. The document was a formal request meant to define who could enter protected royal spaces and under what conditions. He asked why palace staff had been told to advance a permanent arrangement before every required approval had been secured. Camilla answered without hesitation. The queen consort said Tom was her son and should not need repeated permission to visit his own mother. She called the restrictions cold, humiliating, and unnecessary. To her, every checkpoint suggested that her family remained tolerated rather than accepted. William did not raise his voice. The prince said the monarchy could not create institutional privilege simply to spare someone discomfort. Permanent access carried influence, protection, and expectation. Once granted, it could outlive the reason that created it. Camilla's anger sharpened. She accused him of preparing to erase her family from royal life the moment he became king. The queen consort asked whether Tom and Laura would be pushed aside as soon as Charles was gone. Her words struck the king with painful force, because he knew the fear behind them was real. Charles looked down as Camilla repeated a promise he had once made in a recorded private conversation. Her children would always have a place in royal residences. William turned toward his father and asked whether that promise included permanent security clearance. The king finally answered. He had promised kindness, not automatic access. He had meant welcome, not authority. Charles spoke gently, but the distinction cut deeply. Camilla stared at him. The queen consort realized the assurance she had trusted carried no lasting household power. Her expression changed from anger to something quieter and more wounded. Then she pushed the document across the table. She told William to reject it openly, instead of hiding behind officials. The prince took the pen. He drew one clean line through the approval recommendation and set it down between them. Charles closed his eyes. Camilla did not move. The crossed-out request now felt larger than a decision. It felt like a public limit placed on her place within the family. But William's signature could not settle everything. The senior official responsible for royal household authority had already been summoned. The argument had reached its breaking point, and the final decision would now depend on the machinery behind the crown. Royal authority is often imagined as absolute, but inside the palace, even a king's private wish must pass through layers of security, household responsibility, and constitutional restraint. Camilla had relied on her position. William had relied on succession. Charles had relied on time. Now all three were forced to listen, as the Lord Chamberlain opened the access file and explained that the final power did not rest with emotion, marriage, or family promises, but with documented purpose and accountable royal duty. The Lord Chamberlain spoke without hesitation. His office, which manages major ceremonial and household matters for the monarch, could not approve permanent entry without a defined role, official duty, clear security need, or tightly limited permission. Tom had none of those. He held no working royal position, no palace assignment, and no constitutional responsibility requiring unrestricted access to protected rooms. Charles pressed his thumb against the edge of the file. The king understood exactly what the ruling meant. If he approved the request despite those limits, he would create a precedent that future households might be forced to honor. Yet rejecting it would strike directly at Camilla's fear that her family mattered only while he remained on the throne. William stayed silent. The prince had been proven right, but victory brought no relief. He knew the decision could make the queen consort feel tolerated rather than accepted, and he understood that pain could harden into lasting resentment. The second page changed the room. The request covered Clarence House, parts of Windsor Castle, and selected areas inside Buckingham Palace. Clarence House was Charles and Camilla's London residence, while the other locations carried both private and official importance. This was not permission for occasional visits. It was a network of continuing access across the royal household. Then came the sentence no one could ignore. The privilege would remain valid unless expressly withdrawn by the reigning sovereign. That clause could force William, once king, to personally revoke Tom's access. The future monarch would inherit not only the arrangement, but also the blame for ending it. Charles dismissed everyone except the Lord Chamberlain. The king waited until the door closed, then admitted what he truly feared. He believed Camilla would see refusal as proof that he had accepted her loyalty while refusing to protect her children. The official answered carefully. Affection could justify hospitality. It could not create permanent royal entitlement. Charles looked down at the order. Slowly, he signed the instruction halting the proposal. Before the file was removed, the monarch added one handwritten condition. Camilla must hear the decision privately before the household received it. The power question was settled. The emotional damage was about to begin. Camilla received the answer in the room where she had first persuaded herself the request would succeed. Charles entered alone, carrying no aides, no red box, and no prepared speech. She knew from his expression that William had prevailed. Yet the deepest wound did not come from the refusal itself. It came from the realization that her husband had signed the order, and that the promise she believed protected her son had never meant what she thought it meant. Charles told her the palace access proposal had been cancelled. The king explained that Tom could still visit by invitation, but every arrival would need to be scheduled, cleared, and limited to approved areas. That meant he would enter as a private family guest, not as someone holding permanent royal privilege. Camilla did not answer at first. The queen consort listened as her husband described the next step. Security teams would remove the pending extended access designation from the internal system before it could be activated. That designation was simply the palace record that would have allowed continuing entry across protected spaces. Once deleted, the arrangement would cease to exist. Then she asked the question Charles feared most. Will William now decide who is allowed to see me inside my own home? The king said the ruling was not a punishment. He insisted it protected the household, the next reign, and the boundaries between family affection and royal authority. Yet even he heard how weak those words sounded against her humiliation. When Camilla turned away, Charles reached toward her shoulder and stopped before touching it. Her phone rang. Tom's name appeared on the screen. She watched it continue unanswered, unable to tell her son that the request made in his name had become a crisis inside the monarchy. The silence between Camilla and Charles grew heavier with every passing second. When she finally returned the call, Tom spoke plainly. He said he had never wanted access that would divide the family. He had never asked to be treated like a prince, and he would not accept a privilege that left his mother at war with William. Camilla felt the truth land hard. The fight had not been driven only by concern for her son. It had also been driven by her own terror of what would happen when Charles was no longer there to protect her place. She opened a desk drawer, removed a spare palace entry card prepared for testing, and placed it in the king's hand. Then, there is nothing more to discuss. The drawer closed firmly. William soon learned that Camilla had canceled a scheduled family dinner. The prince understood that the official battle was over, but the personal damage now threatened his father's household. Catherine urged him to meet her alone. Victory without compassion, she warned, could become permanent resentment. For the first time, William would face Camilla not as an heir confronting a queen, but as a son confronting his father's wounded wife. There were no secretaries in the room, no household officials, and no king positioned between them. William arrived carrying nothing. Camilla had agreed to give him 10 minutes. The anger remained, but without the access file on the table, their conflict suddenly looked different. One feared the monarchy was being weakened by private privilege. The other feared that the monarchy would one day erase everyone she loved. For the first time, neither could hide behind protocol. William asked that every aide remain outside. The prince wanted no formal review, no prepared statement, and no official recording of the exchange. Clarence House, the London residence shared by Charles and Camilla, had become the place where they would finally speak as family, rather than as competing figures inside the crown. He began carefully. His objection had never been about stopping Tom from seeing his mother. It was about undefined authority that could continue without duty, responsibility, or public accountability. Once permanent access entered the system, William warned, it could survive long after the reason for granting it had disappeared. Camilla listened without interrupting. Then the queen consort admitted what she had refused to say during every earlier confrontation. She had spent years fearing the day Charles would no longer be there to protect her place. She believed securing access for Tom and Laura would preserve one small piece of stability when everything else changed. William felt the anger inside him weaken. The prince told her he understood the fear of losing a parent and watching familiar rooms become unfamiliar afterward. His voice softened, but his decision did not. Compassion, he said, could not turn private love into permanent royal power. Camilla asked one final question. Could written family visit arrangements exist without ceremonial or operational privileges? A ceremonial privilege grants access connected to formal royal events, while an operational privilege allows entry into working or protected areas of the household. William did not reject the idea. The prince offered a limited family protocol. Tom and Laura could visit their mother through scheduled private invitations, but they would receive no automatic access to restricted rooms, government-related spaces, or areas tied to succession. Camilla studied him for a long moment. Then the queen consort reached for the original request resting beside her. She tore the page once through the center. If my children are treated with dignity, I will not pursue permanent status again. William promised that personal kindness would not disappear when the crown changed hands. Camilla answered that kindness had to be remembered by both sides, not demanded from only one. For the first time, they had an agreement. But beyond Clarence House, the private battle was already becoming public. Headlines were preparing to turn a painful family compromise into a national judgment on Camilla, William, and the future crown. By sunrise, the private palace disagreement had become a national spectacle. Broadcasters spoke of royal boundaries. Newspapers questioned Camilla's influence, and crowds outside Buckingham Palace debated whether William had defended the crown or humiliated his father's wife. Yet one image captured the story more powerfully than every headline. A printed access request photographed beneath William's handwritten rejection line, proof that a future king had personally stopped privilege from becoming permanent. The palace moved quickly. Its official statement confirmed that a proposed extension of private residence access had been reviewed and declined. Private residence access meant permission to enter protected royal homes and restricted family areas. The statement did not name Tom, but everyone understood whose request had triggered the crisis. News coverage split almost immediately. One side presented William as the man protecting royal boundaries, before private favor could become lasting power. The other portrayed Camilla as a frightened mother, whose attempt to protect her son had crossed a line she did not fully understand. Charles watched the first morning bulletin alone. The king remained silent until the presenter described the dispute as a direct challenge to the queen consort's influence. He switched off the screen before the report ended. The words had reduced a painful family conflict to a contest between his wife and his heir. Camilla faced something worse. The queen consort unfolded a newspaper carrying the headline, "William blocks palace pass for queen's son." Her photograph appeared beside the prince, while Tom's face sat beneath them. She folded the page inward until her son disappeared from view. Outside Buckingham Palace, anger and sympathy collided near the gates. One woman held a handwritten sign declaring, "The palace is not a family favor." Another argued that Camilla's children should not be punished simply because their mother had married the king. The crowd was small, but the division felt national. Finally responded through a short written statement released to broadcasters. He said he had neither sought nor required special royal status. He refused to attack William, and that restraint weakened the story of an open family war. Senior household staff quietly welcomed the clarity. The decision established a firm rule. Private relationships could not create automatic entry into protected royal spaces. William received Tom's statement on his phone while walking toward a meeting. The prince stopped, read it twice, and handed the screen to an aide. That should be the final word. But the final word did not belong to the newspapers, the crowd, or Tom. The public had judged the conflict in anger and sympathy. Now Charles, Camilla, and William had to decide what lesson the crown would keep and what it would refuse to become. The access request was dead. The order had been cancelled, the security system cleared, and the future reign clause removed permanently. Yet the true verdict was not written in the rejection line William placed across the document. It was revealed in what happened afterward. Camilla accepted that love could not create royal entitlement. William accepted that duty without humanity could become cruelty. And Charles finally accepted that avoiding conflict had allowed a private promise to grow into a threat against the boundaries of the crown. Tom would receive no permanent, automatic, ceremonial, or restricted palace access. His future visits would remain private, scheduled, and subject to the same security approval required for non-working members of the wider royal family. Ceremonial access meant entry connected to formal royal duties, while restricted access covered protected areas where private, governmental, or security-sensitive work took place. Charles authorized a written household rule, declaring that family connection alone could never create continuing access rights across reigns, residences, or protected royal departments. The king understood why the rule mattered. Without it, personal promises made by one monarch could quietly become burdens inherited by the next. The monarch then turned to Camilla and apologized. He admitted that his earlier words had created expectations he could not honor. The queen consort accepted that fear had driven her to seek certainty, where no permanent certainty could exist. She had tried to protect Tom, but she had also tried to protect herself from a future she could not control. William spoke to his father without anger. The prince said he had not exposed the request to weaken him. He acted because silence would have forced the next reign to begin with a personal rejection, making duty appear cruel and family conflict unavoidable. Camilla made the final choice. The queen consort formally withdrew every remaining version of the proposal and asked that Tom's name be removed from all related household discussions. She demanded no replacement privilege and no further concession. Charles gathered William and Camilla in the same room where the confrontation had begun. The king placed the cancelled request inside a folder, closed it, and said, "Family will be welcomed. The crown will not be inherited by association." Camilla did not smile, but she nodded. William answered with the same restrained gesture. Their agreement was not warm, yet it was real. No one had truly won. A mother accepted that love could not secure status for her son. A husband accepted that affection could not become authority. An heir accepted that protecting the crown carried a painful human cost. The exposure ultimately strengthened the monarchy. Tom remained part of Camilla's family, but not part of the machinery of kingship. William preserved the boundary the future crown required. Charles chose clarity over delay. The document was sealed, the request was withdrawn, and the dispute was finished. The palace doors remained open to family kindness, but firmly closed to permanent influence without duty. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.